Hello everybody, this is Founder Laerun, and I am back to begin and to start the part 7 of Fantasy Grounds Unity DM 101 session. This will be your first combat encounter, and we are using Mine of Phandelver as a basic module to go over. So we went over the setup of this combat and how you get to this point. I'm going to go through the rest of it and show some examples of combat. If you have any questions, please leave any comments or questions in the comments section for the video for YouTube. So we'll get back to the lesson. And here we go. Right now, I have pretty much everything laid out. I have my session 1 notes, party sheets ready to go. All the combatants that are going to be in this encounter are on the combat tracker. Now, you don't have to do this if you have more than one set of creatures. You can do them in waves. So we consider this one wave, so you don't have too many things on the combat tracker at once. The other thing is to make sure that you have everything laid out where you want it. So I can actually minimize this for right now, or close it because I have it bookmarked. So down below in the slots, I can bring that back up. I also have the Sword Coast map in case I need it. In this case right now, I don't really need it. But this combat is taking place down here on the road on the way to Phandelver. Right now, to have this map active and shared with the party, if you right-click on this pin and you click Share Sheet, this will load the image that you're going to share with your table right at that point. Or before they come on the table, you can right-click on the image, and in Classic, you're allowed to preload, but in Unity, that they've been depreciated for right now, so I don't know if they're bringing that back or not, but you cannot preload images. So I just wanted to point that out. Next thing is make sure that your combat map has a grid on it. We went over that in the setup. And always make sure your players and your NPCs are on the combat tracker. That is paramount to doing these encounters. If we have everyone ready to go, all the players have their passive abilities active if they have any. Another thing I like to do is stack all the characters and NPCs in one area. So for instance, the Goblins, I'm going to set them in here. So you want to systematically go through all these and make sure that you have them all stacked up. That way, when it comes to the turn inside of the combat tracker, you have easy access and you're not moving windows around. One of the things you want to avoid is keep having to move these windows once you have them in place. So you want to try to leave them where you have them if you can help it. Now on character sheets, I usually put them on the Actions tab, and then down below where it says Mode, it says Combat and Actions. That's usually where I have these set. And as you can see, most of these guys and girls are basically set for that. But I'm going through and making sure that they have everything going and that they're set up. So far, it looks good. So we have our Actions tab on the last tab on the character sheet. And we have some spells in some cases. And then we have this, let's see. All right. So all of the characters are ready to go. So now what I need to do is I'm going to determine whether or not these goblins are going to go first or not. So right now they have a 10. That's default. So when you have to roll, when you add NPCs to the combat tracker, usually they'll auto roll their initiatives. If you want to change that, there are some options where you can change and turn that off. If you go to the options menu, and up on the top right, there's like a gear cog. And in the menu, you can change auto NPC initiative. Right now, it's set to group by default. But if you want it to roll as individuals or to roll manually, where you actually turn the thing off, you could do that. Also, this has Goblin 1 to 4. So if you want to change the numbering so it throws your players off, so it says 1 of 20 or something like that, you can do that even though there's only 4. So you would change that to random. The other thing you can change is hit points. Right now, they're all going with 7 hit points. So if that's something you don't want, you can also change combat tracker. This is in the house rules. NPC hit point standard. If you go to random or max. So if you go to random, they'll roll randomly instead of, the same number. And then the other thing you want to keep in track of is the map diagonal distance. So what that means is if I move diagonally, let's say this character, for example, Right now he's loose. I can move him wherever we want. If I right-clicked on the map in Classic, I'd be able to lock him. Well, in this case, that is not quite ready yet for Fantasy Grounds. So you're going to actually have to count the squares. And technically, if you move, your standard number of squares with this on standard, you're going to be moving 45 feet. So you want to count every other square as 10 feet when you move diagonally. So now you put the map diagonal distance on variant. Now when I target something, which I perform by holding down the right control key and clicking on a target, now it will show the correct distance between there. So if I turn off the variant, now it's 20. If I turn the variant back on, the distance is actually 25 feet. So you have to be careful with that. But that's just how you can tell how far away something is and be a lot more accurate. Now to untarget this creature, since I'm just doing an example, I would repeat the process by holding down the right control key and clicking on the goblin once again. And that removes it from my targeting. So right now the monsters, they could have the jump on the party. Depending on what happens in this encounter, one of the things they have you do is roll to see if the goblins indeed have surprise. So I'm going to go ahead and try to determine that. Usually I do it before the combat, but if you want to do it on the fly, you can. So I'm going to pull up one of the stat blocks, and one of the things they do is say roll this, which is the stealth plus 6. So I'm going to drag and drop it down into the dice tower. And it looks like they rolled a 2, and they get to add their stealth modifier of 6, so the total is 8. So what you do is you compare that to the passive perception of the group, of the party. And the highest passive perception in here looks like 14. So these goblins didn't fool anybody in the party. So they made a noise, or the party was aware of their presence. So no surprise round in here. Next thing is I want to roll the initiative for all the party members. I don't have anyone connected to the table, but if they were, they would be able to roll themselves. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and roll for the party. So I'm going to click on initiative, and then there's a few options. You can clear all initiatives. You can roll for the NPCs. You can roll for the characters, and then you can roll for everybody. I'm going to go ahead and roll for just the characters. And now that I've re-rolled, the top of the order starts here, then it's all the goblins, and then it's the others in the group. So the looks like the players get the first attack. So the goblins hop out trying to ambush, but the players were ready for them, so there was no big surprise. So they're like, aha! Then everyone's like, yeah, right. So they didn't get to gain the advantage or anything with the surprise. So all the goblins are now visible. So right now they're invisible because they're still set up in the combat tracker as invisible, and they were set on the map this way. But in this context, I'm going to make them visible because the party members know they're there. And you do that by clicking on this eyeball on the top left of the combat tracker. Now you can individually unmask these guys, but since they made a bunch of noise and they hopped out, they're no longer hidden. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, and this makes them all visible. So I clicked on the eyeball, which is the master, to either hide all the NPCs, or you can individually show them as you need. So now I have this folk hero. So if I click on this pin or this circle on the right-hand side of the combat tracker under his entry, he has a fighting style that's active, and it's attack to range. So any ranged attacks he gets +2 on. So he's going to go ahead and target this guy up here in the tree, or actually this guy up here in this tree. So this is his range, and this guy has a little bit of cover. So I'm going to click the -2 modifier down below the chat window, and that will offset his +2 to hit from his class ability, or one of his class features. So that'll just kind of cancel that out. But after I have this creature targeted, in which I held down the right control key. I made sure it was this guy's turn, and then I hit or click on the goblin once, and that will send it to a target. So if you go here, it says human noble. He targets number 3. Well, it's not the human noble's turn, but that's who he's targeting. So I'm going to untarget by holding down the right control key and clicking on the goblin again, and that untargets him. So what we want is the folk heroes. If you see he's highlighted, it's his turn. So make sure you make that correlation between the combat tracker and the token on the map. So I almost made him go first, and he's the last one on the list, so you got to be careful with that. He also, for some reason, doesn't have an initiative. That's kind of weird. So I'm going to go ahead and roll his initiative right off his sheet. So let's see. As a player, I can double-click on this, and that gives him an 8. So he's up in the mix more now, instead of being all the way at the bottom. So now I'm back to this player. This player has a longbow, and this player has a great sword. So the fighting style is active, like we were saying earlier. And this guy is going to target. Oops. So you have to make sure I'm on the folk hero. And right now he is going to hold down the right control key, click on this goblin number 2. And if you look in the combat tracker, it shows it's targeted. And the distance is calculated. All you have to do is mouse over or target it, and it'll show you. So now that it's targeted, all I have to do is initiate the attack by clicking on this +6. And that was a double click. In this case, I rolled fairly low, but I have such a high bonus that I was able to connect. So the longbow did its job. And now I'm going to double click the damage. And that took that goblin out in one hit. It did 12 points of damage, which is the max that he can do with that bow, besides doing a crit. And in one shot, he took this goblin out, and this killed the goblin. So the goblin is dying now. So to remove the goblin from the map, so you don't have to keep scrolling through dead soldiers or dead creatures, is you just look here, it says unconscious, and you have this little red circle with a line through it. It says delete item. So once you do that, it also deletes the token off the map. So that person's gone. So this guy is going to move over and engage this creature, just so he doesn't try to attack one of the others, and he's going to call it good. And he doesn't have any bonus actions, so he's good. So he's going to pass his turn by clicking on this next actor button. So the cleric takes an assessment of the battle, and he nods in approval of seeing this goblin go down. So he's going to cast a spell. So again, I'm going to click on his link on the right. Now, the only reason I have this like this is because I don't have any players connected. But if your players know what they're doing, you usually don't have to do this. But if you have new people, I always like to have this laid out so that when you're running the game, you can help them. So now I'm going to go ahead and click Bless. Now, Bless is a domain spell. It's always active and ready for him, but it still costs a spell slot because it's first level. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the level 1 spell slot that he's used, and I'm going to click the Bless spell, and I'm going to bless just the 3 softies. So right next to him, himself, the wizard, and the rogue. They're all going to get the Bless spell. So all I have to do is drag the effect on each participant in the spell. They're within range also. I think they have to be within 30 or 60 feet. And then I'm going to drag it again. And voila, they are all now set up with the effect to help them with better saving throws and better attack rolls. So that's his turn. And then he is going to move down this way. And then he's going to move over and engage this guy. So that's his turn. So they're trying to keep to where these goblins don't get a free attack on anybody. So now the rogue, he sees how everything's going on. He's basically waiting for an opportunity to do his thing. So what his thing is this guy has a sneak attack, but he also has the halfling stealthy attribute or racial trait. He can hide even when obscured by a creature that is at least one size larger. So he's standing behind the wizard acolyte, and he's pulled out his bow, and now he has this goblin targeted. So I'll go ahead and target him. So first I click on the rogue, and then I click on the target by holding down the right control key. Now that he's targeted, I'm going to go ahead and make the attack, and we'll see if it hits. If he hits, he can apply his sneak attack bonus damage. So first, let's see if he hits. So I'm just going to double click on the attack roll. All right, so that's a hit. So we got a total of 20 with a 14 plus the bless effect that he has on him. So he's able to hit with his arrow. And now I'm going to add the sneak attack trait, which all that does is it adds an additional d6 to his damage rolls. And now it is temporary. And now I'm going to double click on the damage, and that should tally up that plus the sneak attack bonus. And that was a total of 11. So he took that guy out in one shot. So very good job. So he just basically shot him and took him out just like that. So there goes that. That's a good thing. So he was able to take that guy out in one shot. So I'll go ahead and remove this NPC from the combat tracker by double clicking on the delete item. So these are the steps that you're going to go through when it comes to running a combat. So I've showed you a little bit of targeting, and now I'm going to show you, just a plain old melee attack. There's a couple ways you can do it. So once the rogue is done, he's going to try to hide again and pass his turn. So now the turn goes to the human nobles. It's this guy. So he doesn't know which way to go, but he's going to go help the dwarf. So he's going to move and engage. And he happens to be using a great axe. So instead of dropping this or targeting anything, I'm just going to drag this and drop it onto the goblin. And in this case, he missed. So he swings that thing, and that goblin ducks underneath his blade. So that was a miss. So I don't get to apply any damage. So that was just a straight up miss. So the goblin was sneaky enough to kind of like duck underneath his swing. Now when I hit the down arrow, goblin number 1 is going to attack the fighter folk hero. He has a scimitar. So in this case, instead of dragging and dropping that onto the fighter, I'm going to do it in the combat tracker. So the fighter folk hero is being attacked by the goblin. So I'm going to take this plus number from the scimitar. It says attack plus 4. And I'm going to drag and drop it onto this fighter up here in the combat tracker. And he was successful. So this wicked little scimitar, I can drag and drop the damage now. And, ooh, that did heavy damage. So that guy's in a world of hurt. So the goblin kind of snickers, and then he has a bonus action, nimble escape. He can move 30 feet. So he's moving away to disengage as a bonus action. So that's his turn. So there's no opportunity attack because that's his bonus action to disengage. So this little goblin here he knows he's in a world of hurt. So what I think he's going to do is he might give up or he might attack. So I'll say 1 to 4, he's going to give up. 5 to 6, or 1 to 4, he's going to keep fighting. 5 to 6, he'll give up. Okay, so he's going to keep fighting. He takes his scimitar and swings it. He's going to try to hit the human noble since he attacked him first. So this time I'm going to drag and drop onto the enemy token. And he missed. So the fighter was able to bring his blade up in time to block the scimitar. And this little guy is he doesn't know what to do, so he knows he's in a world of hurt. So the wizard, she moves up a little bit to take an assessment of the battle. She's making sure that nobody else is in the area. And she yells to her friends, I got this guy over here. So this guy that's hiding in the trees, she is going to take out and do her some spell casting. So one of her spells that she has memorized for the day is Magic Missile. So I need to check off one of those, but she gets 3 of them. So I'm going to go ahead and do 2. So I'm going to drag the damage, which is only 1 dice, and I'm going to right click on it, and that will make 2 dice. So she wants to see if she can take him out. She did heavy damage, but he's not out. He's got a couple holes in him. So the bolts come vaulting out of her hands, and it hits him towards his back. And now she's going to use her last missile to see if she can finish him off. And she does. So he's dying now. He's unconscious. And she used her magic missile, so that was one of her first level slots. But this guy is dead, so she's going to take this individual off the combat tracker. So now that she's done that, she's going to move back this way and take a look around and pass her turn. And now it's the folk hero. So he moves up closer to the party, and he keeps his bow out. He's looking around and make sure that no other goblins are coming out and that everyone has their backs protected. So he's going to keep watch on things. The cleric is going to disengage, so he's going to move away. So that was his turn. And the rogue criminal is going to move up here. And he's going to take just a regular attack, so no sneak attack. And he is successful. So what he's going to do is tell the DM, I don't want to kill him. I want to do a non-lethal shot. So he already hit him. So I'm just going to roll damage. And if it exceeds the number here, then that means the goblin's incapacitated or he's knocked out. So instead of rolling damage on him, I'm just going to roll in the open and see what happens. So he's trying to shoot at his knee. Okay, so he rolled a 9. So that would have taken the goblin out had it been lethal damage. So the goblin goes down, and there's an arrow sticking out of his knee. So he's laying down, writhing in pain, and he's basically giving up at this point. So that I will go to the next person. The human noble is going to pin him down and start tying him up. So what I would do is ask that player if they have a rope in their inventory. And in this case, does he have a rope? No, he does not. So he's going to have to just pin him down until they get rope. So that's basically his turn. And he's going to make a strength check to grapple this guy and hold him. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the strength check. He rolled a 13. So I'm going to drag and drop this number in there. So that'll remind me what the check was for. Now I have a starting point. So if the goblin goes, which he is, he could try to run or he can just give up. So I think he's good because he can't move very well. So he basically surrenders. The wizard kind of says, hey, that was a close call. Good thing you didn't kill this little guy. Let's interrogate him. So that would be the way this plays out. And once that's finished, I would ask the party if they want to do a short or long rest. So as a group, they decide to do a short rest. So I'm going to go to menu on the combat tracker, and there's an eyeball with a lock. So it's clicking on that for rest. And then you have a short rest and a long rest. So in this case, it'll be short rest. Now, during a short rest, your players can initiate using their hit die recovery. So the fighter, the folk hero, if you go to his front page, he has 6 wounds out of 12. So if I double click on this die next on the bottom where it says HD, that will recover his hit points naturally. So he bandaged himself up and he's feeling a lot better, and he is healed for the time being. He won't be able to do that again until next turn, or until he does a long rest, but it's still pretty good. So now the next step is to award the party members for defeating the goblins. So they haven't found Cragmaw hideout, but they did defeat this first encounter, which is kind of what we're going over. So if that's the case, then I'm going to take the encounter rewards, which were stored in my notes and in the module. So there is the goblin ambush. That's the actual encounter. And I'm going to take this, and on the party sheet, on the second tab, or actually the fourth tab, there's an experience area. So all you have to do is drag this pin or this circle on the top left and drop it in encounter. Once you have it in there, you click award, and it automatically splits up the award amongst the party members. So they each got 40 points for the goblin encounter. So as the game goes on, you will end up going to the Cragmaw hideout, and that should be good enough for session 1, as that's what I had planned for. So you're not always going to get what you plan for, but that's all you're going to run. So if you're going to only run to that point, regardless, you have it figured out and you have notes on it. So the only thing that they would have done is take this guy with them. They would avoid a bunch of traps along the way, and they would be able to find the Cragmaw hideout entrance. So that would end the first piece or the first part of this adventure. So this is kind of how you do things in the combat side of things. And what I'm going to do in the next video is I'm going to go over some alternative things you can do for maps. We're going to talk more about the targeting and the combating. And we're also going to do some other exploration skill check things. So take care, everyone. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.